The Vino Geek Podcast, wine from a Kiwi perspective. Welcome back to the Vino Geek Podcast. This week, we're talking about something I didn't think I was going to talk about for about 5-10 minutes ago. Literally, temperature. As the title suggested, we drink our wine too cold. Kiwis, as a whole, we drink them too cold. I'd say in other countries, it does happen to a point, and we need to stop this. And case in point with two wines that I tried earlier this afternoon with the rep/broker for the two companies, two different Chardonnays. Thought my wife and I, we drink Chardonnay, Mrs. Geek and I, and so I put them in the fridge because Mrs. Geek does like it a little bit cooler than, not necessarily cold, but cool. And yeah, pulled them out of the fridge to try them, and nowhere near as good as they were this afternoon. Which this afternoon now they're at room temperature and they were delicious. White wine gets served too cold in most restaurants and bars, and we drink them too cold at home. Sure, you might have a preference for it, but at the end of the day, wines become quite insipid and closed and acidic when they're too cold. When you warm them up to their optimal temperature, they are so much more expressive and delicious. They really showcase what they're all about. Just think about it this way. So, think of a wine as a human. So, when we're too cold, we don't perform very well. We're too cold. We can't produce what we need to produce. We can't do and act, and we're just not. We're not comfortable, so we can't. We can't do what we would normally do. Alternatively, when we're at our optimal temperature, everything's flowing, we can do everything, we're comfortable, we're happy. Again, alternately, if we're too hot, we're sweaty, we're clammy, we're uncomfortable again. We don't want to do anything because we're going to get hotter, sweatier, and more uncomfortable. So, same thing with wine. If the wine is too hot as well, same thing. The wines don't behave very well. They're hot and clammy and alcoholic and just almost angry. Just like humans, we get a little bit angry and a little bit uptight when we're too hot because we're bothered. We're hot and bothered. Wines are the same. And again, just like us, when we're cold, we're quiet, we're reserved, we're tucked up. We don't want to use any energy because we're trying to hold on to what we have. Wines are the same. Wines close down and don't want to have anything to do with the world, basically. And it's exactly what happened to these two wines. So I'm going to show you. I've got them both here. So we have the Sorel Chardonnay 2022 and the Maxim Chardonnay 2024. Now, my notes, both of them, some generosity. There's a little bit of, sort of not, like one of them had sort of caramel tone, the other one had some nougat and curd tones with lovely ripe fruit and a rich, round, full palate, both of them. A little bit more freshness with the Maxim than the Sorel, but that's to do with vintage more than anything. They're a little bit older, so it's softer, a little bit rounder. And a little bit more expressive and fuller, the Sorel than the Maxim, just because of youth versus nothing to do with winemaking styles. It probably, in actual fact, produced very, very similar because most Chardonnay producers do that. The better Chardonnays are all produced relatively the same, and it's all about where they're grown, really. And then allowing for time for them to really get into their work. And I do have them both. I was going to taste them, as you can see, both very cold. And I did have a taste earlier before I started this. That's why I'm doing this, because they're so close, so acidic. It's just like drinking a mouthful of citrus. It's almost like having a super dry Riesling without any relief, or Sauvignon Blanc that is super austere and like super, not ripe fruited. It's very much just green citrus flavors. Very much what it's like. You can't taste any of the oak flavor. The oak character's all hidden behind all the acidity. And it's a real shame because these are delicious wines, two great examples of Chardonnay. And my initial plan was to talk about how you take the same grape variety and have it in different, and get it from different regions, and they're different styles because these are reflecting different styles of wine, and so of the same wine. But yeah, I can't, and it's based on other factors. But region is a big part to play in it, and yeah, I wanted to showcase that, but all changes. So, yeah, now I mean you get a little bit of sort of pepper, but it's very closed, sort of, hard to find anything almost pithy, sort of think of citrus pith. And then on palate, starting to warm just now, but still that acidity that comes right through, and it's tangy, very much only citrus. It's a merest hint of stone fruits coming through, but citrus. It's starting to get a little more roundness on the palate. I mean, in my notes, as I said, it's had a curd like, you can smell sort of curd and nougat on the nose, and it's just ripe, round, rich, full and smooth. That was the key words I used to. So I've talked about this before, but I'll literally show you my notes again. So I have these little short, sort of, they're very much shorthand, and it's just to help me remember the wine and just to help jog my memory. And this one, the Sorel, I really, really enjoyed it because it had that lovely texture and mouthfeel that you want from Chardonnay without the overt oak. There was enough to suggest the oak was there, but it was in balance and in check. Alternately, the Maxim in 2024, a little bit fresher, a little bit tighter on the palate, but still showed everything. It had the baking sort of notes to it, a little bit yeasty. And so this is starting to, you're getting some of the stone fruit now. Almost, it's still very much almost like green stone fruit as opposed to the white, sort of slightly underripe yellow stone fruit that I had earlier this afternoon. Now it's a little bit more generous now. You can taste it a little bit of toasty fruit, which is nice. It's actually showing up better than the Sorel now. So Mrs. Geek is probably going to be enjoying this one very soon because it's opening up, and I feel like it's almost a little bit more generous than it was, not as fresh as it was this afternoon. So it was open before I tasted it this afternoon, and so it's slowly opening up and slowly oxygenating, showing how good this wine is and how, while it's still young and youthful now, it will develop. And this is something I get to go on to some other topic, which is when I taste wines at home. So I buy a bottle in small glasses help. Great little tasting glasses, by the way. Can't tell you the brand. These are actually branded with Kotke port on them, but they're just a really good little tasting glass, and means that I, don't fill my glass up so much. So have a glass over sort of 3, potentially 4 days. I try to not to go to 4 days because wines can be a little bit tired after 4 days, 9 times out of 10, and just not tasting as good as they should. But take the the second day, check it out, see if it improves on the third day, and that sort of gives me a snapshot of how long it's going to take to get into its work, or whether there is a little bit more time to that you can put the wine away. For instance, the other week I had a Martinborough Syrah 2016, and I actually showed it on the podcast, and it was it actually got it was at its peak on the second day. It was beautiful on the second day. The third day, it was starting to fall over again. But it was still awesome to see that a 9-year-old Syrah still had a little bit more to give, so still a little bit more time that you can put it away. Where this is obviously starting to shift and starting to show that this wine will improve, as you'd expect it to. And so it's nice to see that because, Dara Hughes, who makes the wine, who is Mr. Makes a great guy, and as a portal, we're trying to work out getting him on the podcast to interview. And great little wine, and it's just nice to see it opening up. Back to the temperature. I've sort of gone off on a tangent. So one thing in the summer, sure, at Lionel's, we do serve the wine at 8 to 10 degrees, so that's the fridge sits at that, which is an ideal temperature for serving glasses of white wine. However, I get it. People still want it cold. As much as it irks me, I will give them ice to put into the glass because that's how they like it. That's how they like it. As long as they got to try it at its optimal temperature. And if it's not optimal to them, well, so be it. But we at Lionel's will always serve it at optimal temperature because we want you to really get everything out of the wine. And so again, why at Lionel's really good glasses for drinking out of. And that's another thing, is that glasses are so underrated as far as enjoyment of the wine. So you get the right temperature, you get the right glassware, and the wine is not old. Happy days. And so, and what I mean by a wine being old is that it's been open too long. And, and this is another thing that grinds my gears, is you go to places, and I've been to bars that are owned by famous celebrity chefs and watch their bar staff blatantly serve me again from a bottle that I rejected because it was too old. And they decided to go back to that same glass and that same wine, go behind the new one that they opened and gave me the old one again. I walked out. I wasn't having that. It was just like not standing for that. Especially when I know how much the wine cost and how much I was paying for it. Just ridiculous. If you're going to pay top dollar for a wine, if you're going to pay the bottle price for a glass, you expect it to be fresh every time. Don't serve me old wine. That's pathetic if you do that. And these places know who they are. You need to be dating your wine. You need to have some sort of preservation. I actually, in Lionel's, we use WineSafe. We use the argon gas aerosol with the advertise. You see them on socials quite regularly. Really good product. Sure, it's not the ultimate. Coravin is the ultimate, but when Coravin costs this much money, and in effect, WineSafe only costs you this much money, you're silly to go anywhere else. And it means that when it's busier, we can have more wine by the glass. At the moment, winter, we've sort of brought it back down, just tucking things in for winter, and just as a couple of months, September, bang, straight back into a fuller glass range, and just, ramping up for summer where we will have a plethora of wines by the glass. It's just how we roll through it and how we just, stagger it and make it work. Yeah, so let's drink that again. It's delicious. Yeah. Yeah. And, talking about red wine, so we've focused on white wine. Red wine too. As I said, if it's too hot, if it's the middle of summer and it's, 30 degrees and you pull out a red wine, that's at room temperature, it's going to be too hot. you need to chill it down. My recommendation in summertime, if you don't have a cool place to store your wines, have it in a cupboard. That's fine because it's only for short term. If you're cellaring, cupboard's not a good spot for it. But just pop it in the fridge for a little bit and pull it out. Happy days. Something that I have done in the past, and it's really good, especially if you're going to have. It's mainly good for when you're having a chilled red at lunchtime, like a Gamay. I really love Beaujolais. Just chill it down overnight, pull it out in the morning, and leave it sitting there and have it at lunchtime. And it'll be at a really delicious temperature, just under room temperature. Happy days. With the red wines here, just chuck it in for 15, 20 minutes, not too long, just enough to take the edge off, and then you will find how much more pleasant the wine is. Alternately, same with white wines. When, store it in your cupboard, pop it in the fridge for half an hour, and it'll just, again, let you drop it a couple of degrees, and you'll notice a difference. Alternately, you can have it in the fridge and pull it out about that hour before. If you chill down overnight or what have you, pull it out about an hour before, and it'll just slowly come up to room temperature and be at a delicious temperature to drink. And this is the thing, like, not all of us have wine fridges. I don't have a wine fridge. So, I make do with what we have, myself and Mr. We have a cupboard that's a little bit cooler than it seems to be a little bit insulated, so that helps. Otherwise, our wines don't even live in the house. Our summer wines, they're out in actually an old fridge in the garden shed, which is brilliant, by the way, for insulation. But the drinking wines, everyday drinking wines, literally they sit in the cupboard, and wintertime, so hard to warm up the reds. Wintertime, I think the whites taste great out of the cupboard. Mrs. Heat likes it a little bit cooler, so again, go in the fridge for a little bit, come out, or you'll be sitting here like this and just warming it up until it's at that optimal temperature that actually tastes good. And so it's a little bit double parked here. It's a bit, probably not the greatest. Anyway, that's temperature with wine. And as I said, we do drink them too cold as a rule, but I'm not going to say don't drink it like this. Just try it. Wines that you think were rubbish, try them at the right temperature, and all of a sudden, you'll be amazed at how they taste, how much better the wines taste when you drink them at the right temperature. Sure, your favourites, that's a different story. Depending on the type of wine, especially Chardonnay, most people do like those big Californian Chardonnays because you can chill it out right down to fridge, like beer temperature, and you can still taste it. You drink it at the optimal temperature, and it starts to resemble what it normally would. It's quite hard to drink then, and so that's the thing with California Chardonnay. It takes a lot. It can take the chilling because for me, it's just not quite balanced enough. I like a little bit more acidity, and that's why drinking a little bit warmer actually is better. And so both of these wines having a little bit more acidity than a Californian, they don't like to be chilled too much. So just taking a quick pause in the episode to remind you to like, subscribe, comment, and come and follow me on socials too. As far as the wine of the week, we might as well do 2 wines of the week this week since I've got both of them here. And as I have kind of gone through my notes, but the Syrah, we'll start with that. 2022, it's from the Wrekin Vineyard, which is, it's a bit of a rock star vineyard if for people that are in the know from Mola, because it just produces delicious wine. And for those of you who are a fan of Gisborne wine, Milton, so James Milton is actually down working with the Wrekin Vineyard. So as well as doing it, working with a couple of other people here and there. But yeah, so potentially is why it's looking and tasting so good. Yeah, as far as the color, it's a deep yellow, like, really, nice saturation of color. Not dark, not borderline orange. It's still, it has good color, but not full color. Now, one thing, I will mention it early, next episode, I'll be taking the piss out of Wine Speak and all this garbage around the colour and the saturation levels and things like this, because I was actually sent a little clip which is hilarious, but I'll save that for next week. Yeah, and I noticed sort of a curd, like citrus curd on the nose, but the grapefruit, ripe grapefruit, lemon, nougat, the palate was rich and round. The fruit was there and lovely acidity coming through, ripe acidity, and just to a long, smooth finish that had the subtle, creamy sort of nougat sort of character, but not too much. It was still fruit to the fore, and how I do like Chardonnay is fruit to the fore, but using the barrel to enhance the fruit, not just a fruit bomb. So, now that's warming up, it's starting to show that again. Got that like a savoury stone fruit character. That's really that fruit interacting with the oak, so you don't get the oak flavour, you just get a savouriness. And then a light, it's actually quite a rich, full finish, so you really taste it right through the palate. Okay, and so score, actually didn't score one the other week, which is interesting. The score, I mean, yeah, no, just thinking about good colour, so full marks for colour. The nose, and it had enough complexity there. There's good palette weight, good structure, so it's hard to score this anything less than sort of, a 94 out of 100. And, 19 and a half out of 20. Okay, now on to the maximum. Now, one thing, I mean, I can't show you on the thing, but the maximum is very similar in colour, just slightly paler, so slightly lighter, and that's probably due to the youth, so the ages of the two wines. So over time, the colour deepens and gets a little bit richer, where when it's young, it's light and fresh, and so it hasn't had that time to develop with oxygen contact and what have you, and oxidation that happens in the bottle. So there's oxygen captured in the bottle, so that so it's a natural process that happens regardless of whether it's a screw cap. Screw cap makes it slower because it's not allowing any more in, but it still happens. So again, what my notes said, I like caramel with grapefruit and nectarine. So that didn't really say too much, but the nose now, not really picking up the caramel anymore. It's more sort of spice with grapefruit, with the nectarine, sort of white flesh nectarine, not ripe. It's very, very underripe, if you like. And a little bit of a sort of, floral, but not sweet floral. It's just a lifted sort of note, whether it's sort of like like, I don't know, So I was thinking it might be sort of like a vanilla flavour because it wasn't really, really sort of blossom, like wasn't that sweetness, but it wasn't. This time around, the palate is so much more balanced, so much more in control. It really has enjoyed an extra couple of hours of time. So I thought I actually preferred the Sorrel this afternoon, but now I prefer the Maxim. It was showing so much more. No, yeah. On my notes today, talk about the ripe, full fruit, still with good freshness and a lovely savoury finish. That savoury finish is still there. The freshness is more balanced. You can tell again, I bang on about it all the time, ripe acidity. It's beautiful, ripe, and in check, in balance, with that still that lovely full fruit up front, and then that lovely long savoury finish. It's really, really good. Nice to see it again, and seeing it really come into itself. So I mean, this would be, it's just tear up above this one again. So 95 out of 100 and 19.5 out of 100. I can't really push it too much more because while it's really good, it still has a ways to go to be right up there. But yeah, really cool, and really cool to show you guys these side by side, and they have 2 ones of the week, which is very cool. Yeah, this one, yeah. Go. I will obviously, as always, have the retailer list so you can find these wines and hunt them out, and definitely check them out. The maxim I would suggest, if you do buy it soon, put it away for a year. Allow it time to get into its groove. This around, you could do the same, but you don't have to. It's all about being ready to go. Where maxim needs a little bit more time based on the 2 tastings over a few hours and the fact that it's been open already. So yeah. As I said, I'll have a little hilarious wine clip that I won't have it part of the episode, but you'll be able to link to it in the show notes. And I'll be taking piss out of wine speak and talking about what it all means in the jargon. Just going a little bit further, because I do talk about these little bits and bobs, and other people talk about these things, but don't, not actually explain what it is. They just talk about it. So that's what we'll do next week. But until then, thank you as always for listening. Sante and God bless. Sorry. So used to saying it over after a year and a half. Thank you for joining us. Sante and God bless.